Listen, it has been a while since I've seen people lined up to buy a book at midnight. Rebecca Yarros did that. She's the writer of this incredibly popular romantasy series. Book 3 in that series just came out. It's called Onyx Storm. The group chats here, they'll tell you how Rebecca Yarros managed to get people riled up. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Listen, maybe you've seen on the bus or something, maybe you've seen people holding this gigantic book called The Fourth Wing, and you're like, I wonder what that is about. Well, let me set this world up for you, okay? Because The Fourth Wing is but book 1 in the world that Rebecca Yarros created here. It's called the Empyrean series, and is set in a fantasy universe that is constantly at war. The protagonist is Violet Sorrengail. She's up to all kinds of wild things, death-defying training at a military college, obviously bonding with a dragon so she can ride into battle, you know, as you do. And wouldn't you know it, there's a steamy romance with a fellow military cadet who, of course, just happens to come from a family enemy. It is a huge understatement to say that this series is wildly popular. The third book, Onyx Storm, just came out and racked up Indigo's biggest first day of sales in almost a decade. Arizona O'Neill and Lou Aburawi are here to talk about it. Arizona, Lou, welcome to the show, y'all. How's it going?
Hello, hello.
I'm great, hello.
This is a delight to have both of you here. Okay, Arizona, I'm going to start with you because you're the Empyrean expert among us. Give us your review of Onyx Storm. What's the vibe?
Well, in this book, the world building goes beyond the other two. We're visiting all different cities and we're traveling to different continents. There's new characters. I think, you know, Iron Flame ended on such a huge cliffhanger.
Iron Flame is book 2 in the series.
Yeah. Book 2, yes. Yeah. So I was very excited to dive in, and I thought it didn't disappoint at all. Loved it.
The idea of ending in a huge cliffhanger is like normally you'd have to wait for quite a long time. Rebecca Yarros so far has not been the kind of author that has been making people wait that long. Quite extraordinarily, you know, Fourth Wing comes out, and then 6 months later, Iron Flame comes out, and now it's like been 18 months and we're already into the third book. It's pretty wild to me how much she can write and how quickly she can write. Lou, you're a book talker. You've seen the romantasy genre blow up, but this series sort of seems to be more popular than others in this genre. Why do you think the Empyrean series has gone viral?
Well, I think it centers a very strong female with a chronic disability, and it's fast-paced, and she's underprivileged, and despite all of that, she succeeds. And it spoke to a lot of people. I mean, the fantasy genre has been picking up, but romantasy even more so. And so that excitement of this survival of it, but also the romance, it just brought in so many people. And it spoke to a lot of young women as well to see themselves sort of fighting that version of the patriarchy. And it attracted a lot of those young readers as well.
A lot of the conversation I want to have today is a little bit about Rebecca Yarros as an author and the way that she sort of managed to create this universe, Arizona. This was her first foray into fantasy. What else do we know about Rebecca Yarros?
Well, I think one of the reasons that people connected, especially women, to the book so much is the character has chronic pain, and so does Rebecca Yarros. So that's one of the really interesting things that she brings into the book. And just this idea that women are very frail and seen by men as such. And, you know, this main character, she's so frail, yet she's so powerful. And Rebecca Yarros as a person, I mean, I actually don't know much about her because I had never heard of her before this, even though she did write very prolifically in the fantasy genre. In the romance genre. Yeah. And now coming into fantasy now. So this was the first time I had encountered her.
Yeah, when I was like researching to figure out like, okay, where in the general series and arc of books that Rebecca Yarros has written, where are we? I was surprised to find out that like, oh, we're 20 books deep. You know, like it's not like she started writing yesterday. She's written a lot of romance novels before getting to the Empyrean series. Lou, when this latest book in the series kind of came out, the response was so massive, right? Like you saw midnight release parties, which is, you know, it's been a minute since we've seen something like that. The publisher, Little Brown and Company, said he was their most pre-ordered book since Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. What stands out to you out of all of this sort of fuss that sort of illustrates like just how popular this series is?
Well, I think, like you said, because it reminds a lot of these young readers to Harry Potter, Hunger Games, it has that element of fantasy, it has dragons, and it has a woman as a dragon rider. And the dragon genre is predominantly men. They're often men writing them and men being the dragon riders.
Mhm.
And it also talks about how in a lot of bookish spaces, special editions are now hot commodities.
Hmm.
So almost every major bookstore, every book box has a special edition. Whether they are special or valuable, that's always up for debate.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, I mean, almost, I want to say 12 hours after the Target version of Onyx Storm came out, people were already reselling it, which just goes to show the obsession, this sort of craze around special editions and Onyx Storm specifically.
So the book itself becomes a kind of collectible item. I mean, Arizona,
Exactly.
what stories have you seen about people sort of just try to get their hands on these books?
Well, for me, I'm a big sucker for a collector edition, not because I want to resell it.
Arizona's like, actually, I am in the trenches with these people. I am, in fact, trying to get my hands on it.
I am the problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am the problem. I did pre-order my book 4 months in advance to make sure that I got the special edition with the black pages. But it's good because pre-orders are so important for the publishers and the stores to understand the demand and just to kind of, have those sales to keep them going during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that these special editions are perfect for that. But the midnight release parties were great. I knew a lot of people who actually went alone. I think it's like a great place for community to meet other people who have similar interests. It's really beautiful.
I gotta say, Lou, like I as a middle of the road, I'm not an elder millennial. I'm just like a regular millennial. I'm 36 years old, so like I have a lot of memories of these midnight release parties, specifically for Harry Potter. But like we're talking about books where the majority of the audience is in their 20s and 30s, so they grew up on Harry Potter, but they grew up on the Hunger Games and His Dark Materials and Twilight. Do you see a connection between the Empyrean series and all of these titles?
Yeah, I mean, it draws a lot of the same tropes. You have an underdog who has to endure trials. She's in this love triangle. Again, Harry Potter, Hunger Games. And there is the excitement of survival. It's so you root for her, you want her to succeed. And similar to the other fantasy books and the fantasy shows as well, we so desperately want to see the underdog succeed. And so I think that's why Onyx Storm is super successful in its job, but also dragons. Dragons are like an untapped fantasy element, I find. Vampires, werewolves, they're there, but women in relation to dragons, I think, is sort of underrepresented. I do want to talk about how booktok has an influence about how pushing the romantasy genre has done for books like Onyx Storm.
Go off.
So that's where I think a lot of the hub comes from. We always talk about what makes a book viral, but social media plays a huge role in how authors become successful or not. And Onyx Storm is like every other viral book. It was talked about, it's popular, it's hot, it's fun, and people love it.
I think I'm interested in the idea of like you can offer a couple of doors into a book. One of the doors is a dragon, and the other doors is a romance, and you can walk through either one, and this will lead you into the series. Yeah. Arizona, I want to talk about something that is like a little bit awkward and maybe worth talking about here, which is that one reviewer for the Times in the UK wrote, quote, that what the phenomenon of romantasy tells me is that a big chunk of my cohort did not make the transition to more challenging literature. So there is like, on the one hand, people are reading. Shouldn't we be excited about that? On the other hand, should they be reading things that are more challenging? What's your reaction to the idea that, the popularity of romantasy is a suggestion that this audience, quote unquote, didn't grow up?
Yes, no, I absolutely hate that. I think it's a complete misjudgment of the genre and the people reading it. Everyone I know who is reading the romantasy genre are reading other things, and there's this big collective vibe that it's not real literature. And what people who are fans of literary fiction need to understand is that it's actually these page turners and these plot driven books that are driving the book industry. So those books actually keep the other genres alive. So don't be so condescending about it. Also, I think the term romantasy is very bizarre to me. It's very targeted towards women, and it's like fantasy written by women, but there's romance in all other fantasy books. For example, the Fourth Wing series is being compared to all these YA books, like in this New York Times article. But I can name, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, The Magicians, 2 very big books that both take place at magic schools, just like Harry Potter.
Right.
But those are never compared, in terms of themes. So it's not actually a YA book.
Yeah, there's an element just sort of like trying to put down the audience, even as you try to make that comparison. I think that's the part that I'm really
Yeah.
sensitive to. This idea of, well, why do you think this shouldn't count as reading? It's frankly an off-putting kind of sentiment. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Arizona O'Neill and Lou Aburawi are here, and we are talking about the universe of Rebecca Yarros. Lou, we gotta mention the fact that you only read the first of these books. You read the fourth wing, and you're like, I think I'm out on this series.
Yeah.
Why didn't you continue the series?
Well, there are two main incidents for my case in terms of where I stopped with Fourth Wing. The first is Yaros sort of poorly uses the Gaelic, sort of the Gaelic language, the Scottish Gaelic language, and that put off a lot of readers because she didn't do the due diligence that is owed to a language like that. And then there was also another incident where she had posted her sort of ambiguous opinion towards what's happening in Palestine. And because of the lack of clarity, it put off a lot of readers. It's considering that she writes about underprivileged people who have survived genocide, who have survived violence, and for her not to make a clear stance towards the Palestinians left a lot of readers feeling like she was disingenuous, like she was taking all of these serious real life issues and values and placing them into her books, but not putting her money where her mouth is in real life. And so it also just happens to be a circumstance thing. I was lucky enough to read, in my opinion, much more interesting fantasy, much more fantasy that I resonated with by authors of color. And so it was sort of a cocktail of a couple of things for me.
I just want to mention the ambiguity they mentioned there. It stems from this Instagram post that she had in October of 2023. Rebecca Yarros posted on Instagram. It was like, this statement initially did not mention Palestinians, and then she was criticized for that. And then she edited it, and then she added the word Palestinians to it. She also said that she was, quote, horrified by the despicable attack on Israel and also terrified for the children and Palestinian innocents of Gaza. Then she said, quote, she isn't taking a both sides stand. This is a human rights stand. So that was how Rebecca Yarros kind of characterized that. Do you want to talk real quick about what instead you did pick up, like what romantasy books you did pick up that you're picking up right now, Lou?
Yeah, so I have since read a whole bunch, but mainly the Ember and the Ashes series, which is right behind me by Sabaa Tahir. It deals with the same concepts of fighting the empire, underdogs, surviving, a great fantasy system, and then also Legend Born by Tracy Deonn. The book 3 comes out in March. An incredible retelling of Arthur and his knights, and it centers a Black woman. And it's a phenomenal series. Again, if you're looking for strong female characters, Ember and the Ashes and the Legend Born series by Tracy Deonn are two for sure examples. A much more, I would say, heavier book, but still includes female rage and excellent fantasy, is the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang.
Okay, Arizona, last word to you. We've gotten 3 of these books from Rebecca Yarros since 2023, which is exhausting for me to even think about. It sounds like the next one is going to be a little while. The Empyrean series is supposed to be 5 books, and so this was only book 3. While people wait, what do you recommend that they end up reading right now?
Well, I love fantasy, and especially fantasy written by women. And one of my favorite authors is Octavia Butler. So if you haven't dived into the other side of fantasy, because we're, for whatever reason, dividing up romantasy with fantasy, Octavia Butler always has romance, and Fledgling is one of my all-time favorite fantasy books, vampires.
I think that is...
Yeah, very creepy.
I love that. I love that as a place to leave it. I really appreciate your time, both of you. This has been a delight. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.